The Kraken may have yet to play a playoff game, but for any Kraken fans who are wondering what playoff hockey looks like, well, you pretty much just saw it. What's cracking, everybody, and welcome back to Kraken R&R, where, unfortunately, the Seattle Kraken fall just short of defeating the defending champs for the second time this season, falling 2-1 in the shootout, in what has to be probably the most entertaining, if not certainly one of the most entertaining, 1-1 games I've ever seen. I mean, it ends 2-1, but 1-1 during actual hockey. And I don't just say that because it was my two favorite teams playing against each other. Obviously, the Kraken by far and away first place in that category. But it really was a game that had that playoff feel. And in spite of there not being a lot of scoring, there were plenty of scoring opportunities and play going up and down the ice, great checking, good defensive play, and good offensive play to get through that defense to create some opportunities that just didn't end up going. For those of you that like the advanced stats, I know in the end that, at least according to Money Puck, the expected goals weren't that high either. It was roughly 2 to 2.5 in Seattle's favor there. It could have easily been a 3-3 game, and I would not have been that surprised. Just a lot of those opportunities didn't end up going on net, and if they had, they would have ended up in the back of it. Now, as we'll get to, the first period was a little bit weird, but especially those second and third periods were exactly what you would expect to see in the playoffs, just obviously without the consequences at the end of the game. Honestly, for the Kraken, all that was missing in this game was to end up coming away with that second point. And as far as that's concerned, again, I know it's disappointing that the Kraken don't get both the points in this game, and yes, it does come against a team that's not only on the second half of a back-to-back, but also is sitting fourth in their division, while the Kraken just took first and now unfortunately give it right back, being jumped by Vegas, who won tonight as well. But as we've said before a couple of times, this is certainly one of the games to not get caught up too much in where the two teams were in the standings coming into the game. For the Avalanche, again, they're the defending champs and were, at least coming into the season, the favorites to win the West fairly handily. Now, because of some injury issues throughout this first half of the season for them, and a pretty tough first half of this month of January, it might be difficult for them to get to that first in the West spot, but this is a team that coming into this game was on an absolute tear and on a mission to get back to where they expected to be, where after having dropped 7 of 8 from the end of December through the early part of January, this team has been on an absolute tear over their last 4 games, and the first 3 of a road trip for them, winning games 7-0, 6-3, and then back-to-back 4-1 wins coming into this game in Seattle. So to say that they were red hot, I think would be putting it lightly, and really the only thing that they didn't have going for them in this game was that they were missing Cale Makar. So again, in spite of what the standings might say, with Avalanche being as good of a team as they are, and as hot as they were coming into this game, for the Kraken to play them as well as they did, I think says a lot more positive about the Kraken than losing one potential point in the standings might say negative about them. And especially when you consider that the Kraken coming into this game were about as injured as they've been all season. Not that they've been very injured. In fact, the Kraken have been pretty fortunate to avoid injuries for the most part. But once again, both Schultz and Schwartz were scratches in this one. The second game for Schultz and the fourth for Schwartz. But also added onto that list at this game, and it was a game time decision for him, Andrei Burakovsky unfortunately was not able to go against his old team. A pretty big loss for the Kraken, losing one of their top scorers. As we get into the game though, it didn't seem like it was going to matter, at least for the first few minutes of this game, as right from puck drop through those first few minutes, the Kraken are absolutely assaulting the Avalanche end of the ice, getting 6 shots on goal in the first minute and a half of this game, and then getting a power play to boot. Which I will say, this power play is kind of one of those that you'd almost rather not have the call have been made. Now, obviously, you're usually happy to take the man advantage, and it certainly would usually also be the case when you have that much momentum that you would think taking a guy off the ice for the opposing team would be a good thing. But it also gave the Avalanche a chance to regroup after having been pretty much hemmed in and had shot after shot fired off on their goal, seeming like a goal was inevitable. This chance to kind of regroup, even if you do have one less guy out on the ice afterwards, was exactly what it seemed like they needed. The Kraken still do get a couple of shot attempts and one more shot on goal, so by the end of this power play that does end up coming up empty, The shots are 7-0 Kraken 4 minutes in. But unfortunately for the Kraken, that would not last very much longer, as not long after this power play comes to an end, that is flipped right on its head, and the next 10 shots on goal are all for the Colorado Avalanche, which does include a power play of their own that they get a number of shots on, but this is all killed off as well by the Kraken. Once again, this penalty kill seeming to have figured itself out at this point. The good news for the Kraken is that they, like Colorado before them, are able to survive this avalanche of Avalanche shots over these next few minutes, thanks to a couple of missed opportunities on what would have been mostly empty net shots off of either rebounds or passes that did get through the, again, mostly pretty strong defense from the Kraken, but also a couple of nice saves from Grubauer, one in particular where he might have gotten a little bit lucky on a Rantanen shot through a pass from Nichushkin, I'm pretty sure. Rantanen doesn't quite get all of it, and it also deflects off of a defensive stick, going wide of Grubauer, but he's able to get not his blocker to it, but the end of his stick beyond his hand, just gets enough of this puck to deflect it wide of the net. It looked like it was probably going in otherwise, so the last piece of equipment that could make the save makes the save, and the Kraken escape right up until the Avalanche get another power play. Another power play, which the Kraken are able to kill off pretty well, especially a good thing considering it was a little frustrating how this happened in the first place. It's a very, very soft call on Gord as he's crossing in front of the Avalanche net and just barely grazes the mask of Francouz in net, who was outside of the crease, at least where the contact happens, and Francouz kind of sells it a little bit with a big head nod, which is what ends up drawing the call. Gord not happy about it, but again, the Kraken do end up killing it off, and right as it comes to an end, the Kraken get the puck, and Gord gets a breakaway, but just puts it wide. The fans were definitely ready for it to go in, so like the Kraken may have escaped a couple of good scoring opportunities on one end, the Avalanche escape one on the other. Seattle is at least able to maintain the momentum throughout the rest of this first period following this second successful kill, and end up getting a second power play of their own as it comes to it, or in the final 2 minutes of it. Another power play, which they get a couple more shots, but don't end up scoring. And so by the end of the first period, we're still scoreless after both teams got more than 10 shots on goal, right around the same amount. I think it was 11 for the Avalanche and 13 for the Kraken. And both teams had the two power plays, obviously coming up empty. The second period gets off to a pretty back and forth start, maybe slightly favoring the Kraken, but eventually it's Colorado who gets the first real momentum of the second frame, getting a number of shots off on goal and a good push in succession, and a couple more opportunities where they had some net to shoot at, but just aren't able to get a good enough shot off to make it happen. Until eventually a second Colorado push after the Kraken are able to ease that the first time does eventually find the back of the net as Grubauer makes a couple of saves, but the second rebound goes out to Newhook, and he does just barely find the top corner of the net on the far side to give the Avalanche the 1-0 lead and break the ice. Again, for Grubauer, he did make a decent save on the first shot. It would have been kind of a soft goal had he let that one in, but he still makes the save. Then it rebounds out, and there's an Avalanche player standing right next to the net that gets a shot off, but Grubauer is able to get in front of that with either his pad or his glove, but it's a shot from right next to the net off of a rebound, so a pretty dangerous opportunity that he makes the save on there. That rebound, though, ends up going out to Newhook, who then puts the third shot on goal in just a couple of seconds into the back of the net. So obviously not ideal that the first goal of the game comes halfway through and it's for the other team, especially since we've already mentioned in previous videos, in fact just the last one, how important for the Kraken that first goal has been in determining the winner of the game. That having been said, this did not feel like a game that was going to end 1-1 in regulation, much less overtime, and it felt like the Kraken had been getting enough chances that they were eventually going to get at least one to go, if not two or three. So as long as they could shore up things on the defensive end and not let more of these rebound opportunities happen, they would have no problem getting back into this game. Still, you do want to have a nice push after this goal in response, and that's just what the Kraken are able to make happen. Colorado does end up winning the ensuing faceoff and getting, I think, one more shot attempt before the puck ends up down to the other end of the ice, where the fourth line, who didn't get a lot of action in the first period because of all the special teams that were happening, but especially in the back half of this game, really from this point on, this fourth line was maybe creating the most offense for the Kraken of any of their lines. A line that, because of Burakovsky's absence, also included John Hayden playing, I think, his first game of the season for the Kraken. Yeah, actually, I'm certain it's his first game of the season for the Kraken. He played a couple games last year and obviously played in the preseason. Anyway, it's that fourth line with Hayden, Tanev, and Geeky that get the puck into the offensive end, get a couple of chances off, and then go off for their change. And while that change is happening, Donato hops onto the ice just as I think it was Girard is trying to get the puck out from behind the Avalanche net, cleared up along the boards, but Donato takes that puck from right in the corner, keeping the offensive end, skates in with it, fires off a shot, and puts it into the back of the net, right through the 5-hole to tie the game just over a minute after the Avalanche scored. Of course, it's Ryan Donato, unassisted this time, who just cannot seem to shoot a puck that doesn't end up going into the net, as he scores his third goal in 2 games. Of course, as we know, this unfortunately would be the only Kraken goal of the game, and it comes on easily not the most dangerous attempt the Kraken have. In fact, it's probably one of the least dangerous scoring opportunities from an expected goal standpoint. Not only does it come from the outside, but there's 2 defensemen between Donato and the goal. Not that that's often measured when it comes to expected goals, but the point is, of all the shots or attempts that the Kraken got, including a bunch that won't show up in any shot map, which is why I normally show you that shot chart either from StatTrick or Money Puck, but a lot of the great scoring opportunities the Kraken had in this game, and same for the Avalanche at the other end of the ice, just didn't end up on net, so they aren't going to end up getting tracked. Either way, the point is, of all the opportunities the Kraken get in this game, this one going in did seem a little bit weird. But that's what happens when a player is as hot as Donato is right now. So we waited almost half of the game for the first goal to go in. It goes in for the Avalanche, and then the Kraken respond again just over a minute after to get a goal in response to that one, with a good push leading up to it. So then after the Kraken score, much as is the case when you get 2 teams playing a nice even game and playoff style game like this one, with good forechecking and back-checking, defensive play, all that good stuff, the Avalanche press right back after the Kraken score and nearly score again, as they do get one more past Grubauer, but I think it's Larson that ends up pulling it off of the goal line as it leaks through Grubauer. Fortunately though, this time all the players around the net are Kraken players, so when the puck squeaks through their goaltender, there's a couple of guys swatting at the puck. Larson and Beniers are the 2 there, and it's Larson who ends up pulling it off the goal line and getting it out of harm's way. Another one of these high danger scoring opportunities that just never happens because there isn't someone there to shoot the puck in. So thankfully the Kraken survived that, and then play starts to even out and really stays pretty even the rest of the way through regulation in this game. I would say that the Kraken probably did control play for the most part in the third period, certainly the back half of the third. They got the majority of the offensive zone time at the very least, and probably got more shot attempts. Not all of them ended up on goal, but I would say momentum was in Seattle's favor, and they too managed to get one more past Francouz in the final minutes of the regulation. But that one from Alexiak ends up going off of the post and then goes right out in front of the net. But as it's sliding across the crease with empty net behind it, Beniers dives at it but is challenged defensively, and neither one of them can get a stick on it, so that one also ends up getting cleared out of the way. Both teams, even outside of that, having a number of opportunities going up and down the ice where they would get either an odd man rush or a pass that would get through the defense and some empty net to shoot at, but somehow, some way, that shot would just never end up either going on net or getting made at all. Either it just wouldn't go to somebody or it would go to a defensive player. Again, the point is, as I've already said at the beginning of the video and a couple of other times, this is a game that could have easily been 3-3, 4-4. The score could have been a lot higher had some of these bounces gone more towards the offense than the defense at either end of the ice. And by the end of regulation, the shots on goal, while fewer than I think the amount of offense there was in this game might suggest, tell the similar story of a very even game between 2 teams playing at a pretty high level, where the Kraken have 27 and the Avalanche have 26. Eventually getting that one shot back in overtime, an overtime period where, much like the third, the Kraken had control of the puck virtually the entire time, aside from 2 opportunities, a breakaway for, again, I think it was Girard, and a partial breakaway for McKinnon. The McKinnon one ends up going wide and the Girard one saved. So just one shot on goal throughout the entire overtime, as the Kraken never actually take a shot off on goal. Something I will admit that, especially towards the final minute or so of it, I was a bit frustrated by. But either way, with overtime being 3-on-3, it is a much more of a possession game. You don't want to take low percentage shots and lose possession and then have it potentially come back the other way for a better scoring opportunity at the other end. Once you get into those final 60-30 seconds of overtime, I would like to see maybe a little bit more willingness to take a chance. Either way, by the end of, well, again, real hockey, whether it's 5-on-5 or 3-on-3, the shots are 27 apiece for either team, both goaltenders saving 26 of 27. We would eventually go to the shootout, where the only player that ends up scoring is Nathan McKinnon, as he just barely sneaks it through the 5-hole of Grubauer. Grubauer gets his legs closed behind him, but before he can get it off the line, it does just get over the line behind him. So McKinnon scores there, and then Donato and Sprong both, I think, overthought it a little bit too much, end up getting poke checked by Francois, so neither one of them actually gets a shot off. And Eberle does get a shot off, but misses the net, so the Avalanche get 1 in the shootout, the Kraken get 0, so Colorado ends up winning. So in the end then with this game, like I said in the beginning, while it is disappointing to just come away with the 1 point where you'd like to have 2, coming away with 3 points in 2 home games at the end of a stretch here in January where the Kraken have been playing at least every other day, if not more frequently than that, with the 2 back-to-backs in back-to-back weeks. To come away with 3 points against the Devils, who are one of the best teams in the NHL, and the Avalanche, who, even if their record doesn't suggest it, are starting to get healthy again, and certainly talent-wise are one of, if not the best team in the NHL, is still doing pretty well, and not something to hang your head about or feel too upset over as a Kraken fan, or even the team after the game, who would have liked to have that extra point, but I think recognized that this was the type of game that they're going to hopefully be playing come the playoffs, and maybe even against this team if they get deep enough. Which, the good news there, if that were to happen and win, hopefully the Kraken do eventually end up making the playoffs, there's no shootout, and overtime is 5-on-5, something that certainly favors the Kraken, both not having a shootout and playing 5-on-5 until eventually someone ends up scoring, no matter how many periods that ends up taking. But that is still a ways off into the future, and there's still plenty of work for the Kraken to do to hopefully end up getting to that point between now and then. There's more good news for the Kraken in the short term, as they do finally have a chance to catch a breath with 3 consecutive days off, having not had 2 consecutive days off since the start of the new year. So much needed rest for them here, a short one before a couple more games, and then a longer rest with the All-Star break coming up. For the Kraken, though, they'll happily take it. Obviously, the skills competition tomorrow, and that'll give them a bit of a chance to rest and hopefully get some of those guys like Schultz, Schwartz, and Burakovsky back into the lineup. That having been said, when we get to the 3 stars, some of these guys that have stepped in have made an appearance when it comes to that. Now, the first star for the Kraken has got to be Philip Grubauer. He had a fantastic night for them. Does let 2 past him, only 1 ends up into the back of the net, and that one that did end up in the back of the net was on a 3rd attempt. Now, sure, he did give up the rebounds for that to happen, but you'd like to have the defensive sticks get there first, which they did most of the rest of the night, to be fair. Now, with the 2nd and 3rd stars, I do feel like I probably should give one to Ryan Donato, considering he's the only player that scored for the Kraken, or even got on the score sheet for that matter, but I also don't want to only give it to him because of that. He still did have a pretty good game other than that, but I actually am going to give both the 2nd and 3rd stars to guys who didn't get on the score sheet. The first of which being Will Borgen, who honestly I think all in all was the best skater out on the ice for the Kraken. He was good at getting pucks to the net in the offensive end, and very physical along the boards on the back check, or I guess just playing defense in the Kraken end of the ice. Constantly involved in that physical part of the game, and preventing pucks from getting towards the Kraken net while doing the opposite, again at the other end like I just said. The 3rd star, I will admit I probably wouldn't necessarily usually give it to this player, other than the fact that he came in after having pretty much no warning, with Burakovsky being a game-time decision, and played his first game for the Kraken in quite a while, and played pretty well at that. Of course, that now being John Hayden. Now, he didn't get very much ice time at all through the first half of the game. In fact, I think by the halfway point, he had just over 3 minutes. He does end up with just about 9, which is still almost 2 minutes short of everyone else, which is somewhat by design. But he made the most of those 9 minutes, getting a couple of very good scoring opportunities. Nearly got one past Francouz, and had another off a great pass from Tanev that he did put wide on what was a good scoring chance, that being one of those ones I talked about where had it been on net, it probably would have ended up in the back of it. But still, he was having pretty much a positive impact whenever he did touch the puck, and was much more noticeable than a guy that had the amount of ice time that he did usually would be. With that having been said, we are going to close it out for this one, so let me know what you thought down in the comment section. Donato, still honorable mention for sure. Who your 3 stars would be, I'm sure most of you will probably think that Donato is a 3-star, or one of the 3 stars. But let me know what you think down in the comments. And yeah, I will still have some videos coming out here over these next 3 days. As much as I would like to just take a 3-day break, I'm not going to do that. So we'll work on a couple one-on-ones I want to work on, a year in review that's still been overdue now for a couple of weeks, as well as a couple of other ones like the mid-season review for the Kraken. Anyway, the point is there's some more videos for me to work on. So while the team gets a break, I won't necessarily give myself one. With that having been said, if you have made it to this point, thank you very much for watching. If you did like or enjoy this video, there are buttons to be that for that stuff down below that help support the channel, so I'd appreciate you using them. Until next time, which will be one of those videos, whichever comes first, or the next game if you're just in for the R&Rs. Stay safe out there, be good to each other. God bless, go Kraken.